South Africa has passed a year since we went into lockdown. Now, for some, perhaps introverts, the first few months of lockdown might have been wonderful. But you know what they say about too much of a good thing? But for others, there's the mental anguish of ongoing isolation. And then, of course, that's before we speak about the loss of loved ones, a friend, family members as a result of COVID-19, not being able to say goodbye to those who've lost their lives for other reasons. The way we grieve, love, live and interact has indeed changed. And are we coping? I'm joined now to discuss some of this with Cassey Chambers, the Operations Director from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, who joins us via Skype from here in Johannesburg. Cassey, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into the core of our discussion, I'd like to bring up a statement that your organisation has released just this week, and it focuses on the death of a woman who was murdered, allegedly on suspicion of witchcraft, and it was later discovered that she had an untreated psychiatric conditions. Talk to us about the story and SADC's reaction to it.
I think it's an incredibly sad day in mental health when we're still hearing of cases that people living with a mental illness are being persecuted and punished for dealing with an illness, for being sick, for being ill. We were incredibly saddened that this had been building up over the last couple of weeks, and then she had actually succumbed to her injuries on Thursday. And I think it highlights for us just the misinformation, the lack of understanding and the lack of compassion that people have, and especially in communities around mental health. So when you're tying in a lack of information, not understanding what mental health or mental illness is and isn't, and then understanding that this is now really impacted in a very traumatic way for those that had to witness her death and her murder. It impacted the family, the friends, the community. So for us, it's a really stark reminder of the stigma that still exists. I think we were also just deeply appalled that these kinds of barbaric things are still happening in 2021. To people who really just need our help. And instead of seeing someone who perhaps has some symptoms, who's not coping, who's doing things that are a little bit differently and trying to deal with the world around them, instead of saying, hey, I think you need help, we're now blaming and attacking. And I think what this does for us as mental health is it takes us 10 steps back to encouraging people to come out, to speak about their mental health issues, to seek help. It brings in fear again, that if I tell people I have a mental illness, or if my family member tells other people, or people find out, that they're going to be discriminated against or treated differently, or in this specific case, even punished and hurt.
And I suppose
we don't want.
And I suppose it also highlights the big need that we have for resources and help around mental health at community level, because we know for a fact that we do not have enough of these resources at grassroots level.
Absolutely. And I think, with South Africa before COVID, a couple of years ago, we've been dealing with the life epidemic issue, which highlighted we do not have community mental health resources. And this is a stark reminder of why we need it. We need mental health in the grassroots levels, door to doors, in communities where there is more help available, so that we don't have people who are suffering in silence or being too scared to go out. So something drastic has to happen. Losing a life and losing a loved one to something like this should never happen. And it should never happen to anyone else. No one should be too afraid to come out if they have a mental health issue, or too afraid to seek help. So we have to do so much more.
Indeed. Now, mental health is really, I think, just anecdotally from speaking to people, I've never come across more people speaking about their own mental health as I have as a result of this pandemic. How are we doing? Are we okay? 1 year, going into a second year of some kind of lockdown, more and more people are still working from home. The isolation continues, and the restriction on our movement continues. Are we coping?
We've never had to do a global pandemic, and I'm really encouraged to hear so many people who are talking about it. We're making it normal to talk about how we're not coping, or there's extra stress or anxiety, or I'm feeling more down than usual. So I think the first and foremost, it's okay not to be okay. We're still dealing with so much uncertainty, so much fear. We're not sure when is the next wave coming. How do I adjust to the new regulations, school, work, all the things that you've mentioned. It's also been a very long time. It's been over a year. So that impact on how we function, how we operate, has been profound. And we've even seen that from our call volumes, from people reaching out for help, hearing from mental health professionals who are seeing more people than they ever have before. And I think it's just having to normalize that conversation. We're not supposed to be okay. It's a global pandemic. So yes, there's increased anxiety, increased depression. And I think it's about having those connected conversations so that people can just feel more okay to talk about these heavy things. I think in general as well, where we are currently in the country on the back of starting 2021, the back of a second wave and the looming third wave, I think anxiety levels are pretty high. We've dealt with a lot of grief around COVID and other related illnesses that, have made it very difficult for people to process. So yes, it's been incredibly hard. And I think we were all expected to just be totally okay and fine and carry on. But no, it's hard. And it's okay that it's hard. And the more we talk about it, once you name it, you can tame it. The more we talk about it, the more we can get help, learn coping tips, and just manage a little bit better.
Let's talk a little bit about those coping tips, because we are running out of time, unfortunately. Talking about it is one thing, but we all know not everybody's wired to talk about their feelings. But what can we do if we feel like everything's just becoming too much? You're being struck down by the sameness of every day. I've heard that there are businesses who are dealing with their remote staff by creating virtual water cooler moments or chat rooms where people can just take a breather and talk about things that aren't work-related as they would when they're at home. But what can somebody personally do just to break what they might feel is a route towards a bit of a darker space mentally?
And I think what everyone should do is that they should do something every day for their mental health. Even if they're feeling fine and feel like they're coping, everyone should be doing something to look after your mental health. And it could be from getting a routine, making sure that you're getting enough rest. You're doing things that you enjoy, that fill your cup. And it's these things that we think we already know and we take for granted that we would do. But sometimes we need reminders. We need a list. We need someone to help motivate us. Doing things that we enjoy, making sure that we're getting out and getting some fresh air, some kind of movement and exercise. But the power of a connected conversation in a time of social distancing, and like you said, isolation, work is very intentional. We're missing out on those human connections. So finding out, having a conversation with someone, and it can really just lift your mood. Finding ways to connect with other people is incredibly important. I think, again, going online, go to SADAG's website. We have so many different tips and tools that you can try. So if you're stuck about what can I do today to lift my mood or to lift me out of what I'm feeling, go have a look at our website at sadag.org. And we've got some great ideas that you can try, and let us know. Maybe you can add some more to the list.
Indeed, and I do think, hopefully, this conversation has reached at least one person who needed to hear that advice today. So thank you so much for your time this morning.